boy awoke, his head throbbing, his body heavy. He rose from the cobblestone path to a heavy, thick mist obscuring his surroundings.
We're lost.
There's nothing for us.
Why did I agree to this?
The boy began to walk along the ruined path. Along this path, he came across many dead trees and shrubbery that appeared to dance with the wind despite their lack of life. After a short walk, the boy came across a small wooden shack which appeared to have sunken slightly into the ground and had since then been left to rot.
Patience. I'm sure there is something here that can help us.
With a slight push, the wooden shack door snapped from the hinges and fell onto the floor, creating a loud bang that echoed all across the abandoned wooden shack. The boy entered the shack and soon after felt a cold chill crawl up along his spine, like a caterpillar along a leaf, or a spider crawling along an arm. He began to walk into the shack, examining the mold-covered walls and tarnished furniture which had definitely seen much better days. The cool breeze grew into an even colder chill in a matter of seconds. The boy turns and heads for the exit, but is stopped by a tall, dark figure. Its torn-up cloak was lengthy, making it impossible to see its face. Its hands were pale, disfigured, dirty, and coated in a mixture of mud and dry blood, which still stunk of rotten and decaying corpses. The boy found himself unable to move. His body had locked up and succumbed to the embodiment of fear which towered over him. The figure's mutated hand began slowly reaching out to the boy. Then, as if in an instant, his vision went to black. The ground dissipated from under the boy's feet, and he began to sink endlessly into the depths of eternal black. However, the boy soon saw a large landscape of green, with a straight line of grey below him. Before his mind could collect itself, a heavy weight soon came upon him and dragged him down towards the earth, before again blacking out. The boy awoke, his head throbbing, his body heavy. He rose from the familiar-looking cobblestone path and looked around at the mist that was coating the land around him, except this time it felt less thick than before, so the boy could see to some extent further than what he originally could. He followed the cobblestone path down the same route he had taken before, but the voices intervened.
Do you really think that this is a good idea to go down the same route and the same shack where we saw him? If you want to keep making the same mistake repeatedly, go right ahead.
The boy, now cautious and aware of the danger that surrounds him, presses on at a marching pace. He notices the same wooden shack quicker than last time, but noticed a small added detail that wasn't there beforehand. Letting his curiosity get the better of him, he goes to the back of the small wooden shack and notices a small tombstone, which was inscribed with the words, Titch, 2001 to 2010, a faithful companion till the end. He looks next to the grave and notices a small ball next to it. He picks up the ball, then continues with following the path. As he follows the trail, he looks at the trees, which seem to sway more violently in the direction that the boy was initially going, as if tempting him to keep on going in his general direction. He continued to follow the path until he arrived at a lone house on the top of a small, singular hill. The house's exterior was itself in a state of ruin, as if it was uncared or unloved by the previous owners. He turned away and began to walk back, but the cloaked figure was behind him, and began to reach out for him once more. The boy jumped away from the cloaked figure's presence and ran towards the house. He swung open the front door and sprinted into the hallway. Then, he slammed the door and barricaded it with multiple drawers. He backed away from the door and began to run down the hallway as fast as his small, thin legs could carry him. Once he had reached the end of the hallway, he began to look around and noticed the cleanliness of the interior of the house, with no signs of aging or looking the slightest bit decrepit. There were numerous pictures strewn across the house of a family, 2 young parents and a small boy standing in front of them, with his parents' hands laid firmly on his shoulders.
They
look so joyous. It must have been a great day.
You can see it. Of course you can.
He turns around and finds the cloaked figure, again right behind him. The boy found himself, again, unable to move. The cloaked figure reached out to the boy, but it hesitated. It looked at the photo of the family, of the 2 young parents, and the boy stood in the center of them, and then looked back at the boy, then to its own hand, as if it was ashamed of what it had become. The boy tried to utilize this chance of distraction and flee, but the cloaked figure apprehended him by placing its hand on his shoulder instead of his face, much like the photo which it saw earlier. The boy's vision once again faded to black as his body and mind began to fall back into a swirling abyss. The boy had awoken again in the same spot, with the same aches and pains, but the fog becoming less and less dense each time he does so. He continued his journey, relocating the small wooden shack and hilltop house with growing ease, searching every nook and cranny for any hidden detail, anything to help him further understand the reasons for him being where he was, but to no avail. For every bit of knowledge he learns, the cloaked figure would time and time again find the boy and send him back to square one, redoing their game of cat and mouse every time. After failing to find any sort of understanding as to the reason of his placement in this mysterious landscape, the boy awoke again on a cobblestone path, got up, and proceeded to make his way to the house to again try his luck. But this time, the fog had been cleared completely. He could see the small wooden shack and hilltop house, which were much closer to him than they were originally, as if the fog had created an illusion of distance. The boy had noticed a road that he had not previously encountered before on any of his last reincarnations. The road had deep tire marks, which left a long trail along it, which led to the boy deciding to follow this trail, unaware of what it may lead to, or whom it may lead to. He walked for what seemed like an eternity along the desolate and lonely road, hoping the tracks would soon come to an end and reveal to him what he wanted most: answers. After dragging his body across an almost never-ending desert of asphalt, he finally arrives at the scene of a horrific car crash, which captures his full attention like a deer in headlights. He went to go investigate the car crash to understand what happened to cause such a travesty. The cars were mangled beyond recognition, but upon further inspection, he noticed a hand dangling outside one of the windows, which was badly cut and bleeding profusely. It was small, similar to the boy's own hand, which prompted him to inspect it, only to find that it too had lacerations across it, rendering them unrecognizable. His mind went from relaxed into a ball of confusion, failing to grasp what his eyes had locked onto, and now he and his body wanted to reject the ghastly sight. His mind wanted to reject what was presented to it, and forget that it had ever happened. His body felt cold and weak as the cuts began to grow deeper, and the bleeding became more profuse with each passing second. He fell onto the ground, fatigued by his own wounds and left in a state of decay, inviting the cloaked figure to its whereabouts and opening the doors to repetition. It glided over to the now weakened boy, who was begging for mercy and pleading to not be sent back to the start of this futile journey. The cloaked figure raised its hand and proceeded to approach the boy, but as it was within its grasp, it looked ahead and noticed the crash and the fire that stole the gaze of the cloaked figure. It looked at the flames, then back at the boy as if it felt sorry for him. It lowered its hand and instead moved it towards its hood. It pulled back, removing the hood, and thus revealing its face to the boy at long last.
It can't be, right? It's just an illusion, a misleading mind trick, a coincidence.
Isn't there a monster?
It had revealed itself to be the woman. This woman's appearance was identical to the one that was on the family photo in the lone hilltop house. She walked over to the boy slowly, as if she was planning her every step, executing them near flawlessly. She knelt down to him and took him in her arms. And with that said, the boy's eyes grew heavy and his body became ice cold to the touch. His eyes began to close and had soon been enclosed in complete darkness. The boy had awoken, not in a forest, not on a cobblestone path, with no aches or pains, but in a hospital, with IV bags and tubes wrapped around his body. To his bedside was the woman, her face red, caused by her near-endless crying. The doctor went over to the monitor, flipped a red switch. The boy's eyes grew heavy once again, and began to fall once again into a deep slumber. But this time, he will be at peace.